My mom left me a locked box. Everyone wanted me to throw it away. The wind whipped through the small cemetery, rattling the bare branches of the trees like they were trying to speak. I stood there in my black suit, feeling the cold seep into my bones. My eyes burned, not from tears, I had run out of those, but from exhaustion. I hadn't really slept in days. The world felt gray as the sky above the line of tombstones. Mom's casket was being lowered into the ground. I kept my gaze steady, my hands shoved deep into my coat pockets. The wet leaves under my shoes made soft, unpleasant squelching sounds every time I shifted my weight. People stood in small, whispering clusters. Some dabbed at their eyes with handkerchiefs. Others looked at their watches, probably thinking about lunch. Next to me stood Lauren. Lauren, my cousin, always perfect. Perfect hair in a perfect chignon, perfect coat, perfect expression of just enough sadness. I could almost hear her thoughts. Hurry this up so we can get to the important part, the will. Behind us, Mr. Green clutched his worn leather folder like it was a lifeline. The family lawyer. I'd known him since I was a kid. He was the kind of man who seemed to have been born old, with silver hair and an air of being perpetually inconvenienced. I kept thinking about how strange it all felt, that this was it, the last goodbye. And that box, the one thing she'd made me promise to take. The service ended. People murmured empty condolences as they passed me. I nodded politely, not really hearing them. Lauren leaned in. Her perfume was sharp, expensive. "You holding up okay?" she asked, voice dripping with mock concern. I gave a tight smile. "Fine. Good. Let's get this over with. We've all got places to be." Of course. An hour later, we sat in Mr. Green's office. The room smelled like old books and coffee. Dust motes floated in the pale afternoon light that came through the blinds. Lauren sat across from me, legs crossed, fingers drumming impatiently on the arm of the chair. Uncle Todd and Aunt Marlene were there too, whispering to each other. Mr. Green cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is a difficult time. Let's just read it," Lauren said. He adjusted his glasses and began. Mom's voice came alive in the dry legal language, and for a moment I could almost hear her. She left small sums to a few charities, some jewelry to Aunt Marlene, a watch to Uncle Todd. Then came the part everyone had been waiting for. The house, the savings, the car. Lauren straightened in her chair. I saw it, the gleam in her eye. The house and its contents, as well as any remaining financial assets, Mr. Green read, are bequeathed to Lauren Matthews. Lauren exhaled like she'd just won a race. And to my son, Jackson. Mr. Green hesitated, glancing at me. I braced myself. I leave the contents of the storage closet marked in the will, namely the locked box, sealed and stored there. There was a long, awkward silence. Lauren snorted. Actually snorted. "You're kidding, right? A box? That's it?" Mr. Green looked uncomfortable. "Your mother's wishes were very specific." Lauren shook her head, smirking. "Well, that's fitting, isn't it? Trash for trash." I clenched my jaw but said nothing. Mr. Green shuffled his papers. "She asked that it not be discarded lightly, but honestly, Jackson, I'd advise you to think carefully before keeping unnecessary items. Sometimes letting go is the healthiest choice." I stared at the table, at the wood grain that seemed to swirl like a storm. A box. That's all I was worth. Later, I stood outside the office, the box in my hands. It was heavier than it looked, wrapped tight in layers of cracked brown tape. The corners were scuffed, the lid dented in places. Everyone else drove off, leaving me alone on the sidewalk. The cold bit at my face. I looked down at it and almost laughed. "What the hell, Mom?" But instead of tossing it in the nearest trash bin like part of me wanted to, I carried it to my car, because something deep inside told me that whatever was in that box wasn't trash at all. The box sat in the corner of my apartment, like some kind of unwanted guest. I'd carried it up the stairs, set it down near the bookshelf, and then just stared at it for a good 5 minutes. The cardboard looked even more battered in the dim yellow light of my living room. My apartment wasn't much, but it was mine. A small 2-bedroom that I barely kept clean. Books lined the shelves, stacked in messy towers wherever they wouldn't fall. The old couch sagged in the middle, its fabric worn thin. The kitchen table was buried under papers, bills, unopened letters, a pizza menu I probably should have thrown out months ago. And now, this box. I ran a hand through my hair and sighed, sinking onto the couch. My eyes kept drifting back to it, like it was daring me to open it. But I didn't. Not yet. The tape was cracked and yellowed, layered so many times it looked like my mom had been sealing it up for years. And there, right on top of the tape, faint as a ghost, were 2 letters, RM. I frowned. The initials meant nothing to me. Not then. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. Lauren. Of course. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another buzz. This time, a text. Hey, just checking. Did you decide to get rid of the box? I can help if you want. I stared at the message. The box? She hadn't cared about it at the lawyer's office. She'd laughed at it. But now she was texting me about it? I didn't reply. A few minutes passed. The phone rang again. Reluctantly, I answered. Yeah? Jackson. I was just thinking about you. Lauren's voice was honey-sweet. Too sweet. Were you? I said, leaning back and rubbing my eyes. Of course. I know today was hard. I wanted to say, if you want, I can come by tomorrow and help you go through Mom's things. You know, help you sort out what's worth keeping. I could almost hear the smile in her voice, like she was trying to sound helpful but couldn't quite hide the calculation underneath. I'm good, Lauren. Oh, come on, don't be like that. I mean, it's just, there's no reason to keep junk around, right? That box. It's probably just full of old papers or knickknacks. Sentimental, sure, but it's not healthy to hold on to that stuff. You should let it go. Her words echoed what Mr. Green had said. Let it go. Throw it away. Thanks for the concern, I said, my tone flat. But I'll handle it. There was a pause. Then, a little too quickly, of course, just trying to help. You know where to find me. Yeah, night, Lauren. I hung up before she could say more. I stared at the box again. Something didn't add up. Lauren didn't do anything unless it benefited her. And now she was practically begging me to let her help with something she'd mocked hours ago. I got up and walked over to it, squatted down, ran my fingers over the tape. It was old, sure, but sealed tight. My mom had made sure of that. The initials on the tape, RM, they, felt like a clue, but I couldn't figure out what they meant. Why had Mom left me this? And why did everyone want me to just throw it out? The apartment felt colder all of a sudden. I crossed my arms and backed away, leaving the box where it was. I didn't know what was in it, but I was starting to think that whatever it was, it mattered a whole lot more than anyone wanted me to believe. The apartment was silent, except for the steady tick of the wall clock. The city outside had settled into its usual nighttime hum, distant sirens, the occasional honk, the low rumble of a bus passing by. But inside, it was just me and the box. Moonlight spilled through the half-open blinds, casting silver bars across the floor and over the battered cardboard. The box seemed to glow under it, as if the night itself wanted me to open it. I sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the thing like it might open on its own. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. Hours earlier, I'd told myself I wasn't going to touch it, that I'd sleep on it, think it through. But here I was, at midnight, with an old pocket knife in my hand and sweat on my palms. I took a deep breath and knelt beside the box. The tape was so old it had gone brittle. My knife blade slipped under a corner of it. I hesitated, just for a second. Then I pressed down, slicing through the layers. The sound was sharp in the quiet, cirk, as the blade worked its way along the seam. Dust rose up, carrying a smell of old paper, like the inside of a forgotten library. I peeled the top back and stared inside. For a second, all I saw were stacks of yellowed envelopes and a bundle of documents wrapped with a faded ribbon. My hands shook as I lifted out the first envelope. My name was written on it in my mother's handwriting. Jackson. I opened it carefully. The paper inside crackled as I unfolded it. My dearest Jackson, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you all this in person. I wanted to. I wanted to so many times. But I was afraid of what it might do to you. afraid of what it might bring back into our lives. But you deserve the truth. You always have. My chest tightened. I swallowed hard and kept reading. Inside this box are things I've kept hidden for so long. Photos, letters, documents, proof. The man you've called your father all these years, he isn't your biological father. Your real father's name is Robert Moore. I froze. Robert Moore. I knew that name. Everybody did. The man was a legend in business circles. One of the wealthiest men in the state. No, this couldn't be right. I dropped the letter onto the couch and dug deeper into the box. There were photos. I held one up to the moonlight. It was my mother. Young, smiling, happy in a way I barely remembered seeing. And next to her, his arm around her waist, was a man I didn't recognize. Dark hair going silver at the temples, a confident smile, sharp eyes. More photos, different places, different times, but always the two of them together. Always close, always looking like they belonged. My pulse thundered in my ears. I found the documents next. Thick papers with official seals, notary stamps, signatures. I couldn't make sense of all of it right away, but the words paternity and acknowledged jumped out at me like neon signs. And then, near the bottom of the stack, a sealed envelope with a lab's logo on it. My hands trembled as I tore it open. A DNA test. My name, Robert Moore's name. The result, 99.99% probability. I sat back on my heels, the room spinning. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But it was. It was all there in black and white. The man I'd grown up calling Dad wasn't my father at all. Robert Moore was. I thought of all the times Marcus had looked at me like I was a disappointment, like I was a stranger. I thought of my mom, always so guarded, so careful about what she said when it came to the past. And now, this. I stood up, clutching the edge of the couch to steady myself. The moonlight felt colder now, like the whole room had dropped 10 degrees. My mind raced. What did this mean? Why had she kept it from me? Why now? Why leave me this secret instead of telling me when she was alive? And Robert Moore, did he know? Did he care? I didn't have answers. Just 1,000 questions and a box full of truths I wasn't sure I was ready for. I sank onto the couch, the letter still in my hand, and stared at the night outside. The world hadn't changed, but mine had. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the dark, the letter from my mother resting on the coffee table in front of me, alongside the photos and documents that had flipped my life upside down. Every time I closed my eyes, memories came flooding back. Moments I'd pushed aside or hadn't thought twice about at the time. Now they felt like neon signs I'd somehow missed. I thought of Marcus, the man I'd called Dad for 29 years. His face, always stern, always distant. He was the kind of man who never raised his voice, but didn't need to. His disappointment was sharper than any shout. I remembered how he'd look at me sometimes, like he was seeing through me, like I was some puzzle piece that didn't fit. Not once, not one single time did I ever hear him call me son. Boy, he'd say, come here, get that done. You'll never make it if you don't toughen up. No warmth, no pride, just expectation and silence when I tried to please him. Then there were the little things my mother said, things I'd brushed off as nothing at the time. You're more like me than your father, she'd say with a soft smile when I was a kid, ruffling my hair. Or, when Marcus had been particularly harsh, don't mind him. You've got your own kind of strength. His isn't the only way. I thought of the way she'd look at me sometimes, like she was on the verge of telling me something but then changed her mind. The long pauses, the deep sighs, the times she'd start to speak, then just shake her head and say, never mind. And the birthdays. Marcus never remembered the exact day, or if he did, he never showed it. No gifts, no cards, just a nod at dinner maybe. But Mom? Mom always made it special. Always. Like she was trying to make up for something. All these moments were right there, right under my nose all along. I rubbed my hands over my face and stared out the window. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in pale pink and gold. The city was waking up. People were going about their lives, And here I was, sitting in my apartment trying to figure out who the hell I really was. The box sat open on the table, its contents spilling out like a wound I couldn't close. I knew what I had to do. Mr. Green. He had to have known something. He'd been part of Mom's life for decades. He was the one who'd handed me that box like it was nothing. Like it was junk, but it wasn't nothing. And if he knew, even a piece of this, I needed to hear it from him. I stood, feeling the weight of the night settle in my bones. I started gathering up the papers, the photos, the test results, sliding them back into the box as carefully as I could. My hands weren't trembling anymore. I felt steadier now. Angry, maybe, but focused. I was going to see Mr. Green, and I was going to get answers. Mr. Green's office looked smaller in the morning light. The same old wooden walls, the same heavy curtains that hadn't been pulled open in years. The place smelled of dust, paper, and stale coffee, like secrets sealed up too long. I stood in the doorway, holding the box against my hip, and watched as Mr. Green rifled through a stack of folders on his desk, pretending he hadn't heard me come in. "Mr. Green," I said, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He glanced up, his glasses sliding down his nose. "Jackson. This is unexpected." "Yeah, I bet it is." He gestured to the chair across from his. Sit. I didn't. I set the box down on the edge of the desk, close enough for him to see what it was. His eyes flicked to it, just for a second, before he forced them back to mine. "What can I do for you?" he asked, smoothing his tie with a hand that wasn't as steady as he probably hoped. "I want the truth." "The truth?" I leaned forward. "You knew, didn't you?" He blinked. "I'm not sure I understand." "The box, the papers, the DNA test. Robert Moore." I let the name hang there between us. His lips pressed into a thin line. I took a step closer. "Did you know?" There was a pause. Then he exhaled, long and slow, like a man deflating. "Your mother. She was a good woman. A kind woman. She asked me to keep certain things private. I honored that request. So you did know." He didn't answer, not directly. Just stared at the worn surface of his desk, as if it might offer him a way out. "Why?" I asked, quieter now. "Why would she leave me that box and nothing else? Why would she let me go my whole life not knowing?" "She wanted to protect you," Mr. Green said. "That was always her priority." "Protect me from what?" My voice rose despite myself. "From the truth?" He looked up then, and for a moment I thought I saw something like guilt in his eyes. From what the truth could bring. She was afraid. She didn't want to drag you into complications. "Complications," I repeated bitterly. "Like my actual father being one of the richest men in the state?" He shifted in his chair. "There were reasons, things you might not understand, and it wasn't my place to say." I stared at him, anger bubbling under my skin. He was still hiding behind vague words, behind loyalty to a dead woman. "You could have told me," I said. He spread his hands helplessly. "It wasn't my choice." I grabbed the box and turned to leave. The office felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. But as I opened the door, I nearly collided with Lauren. She stepped back, surprised, or at least pretending to be. "Jackson. What a coincidence." "Right," I said flatly. "I was just in the area. Thought I'd stop by and see if Mr. Green needed anything else regarding the estate." Her eyes darted to the box in my hands. "You're still carrying that thing around?" she asked, forcing a laugh. "I thought you'd have thrown it out by now." I said nothing, just moved to step past her, but she laid a hand lightly on my arm. "Jackson, wait. Look, I know we haven't always been close, but I'm your family, and I hate seeing you get caught up in nonsense. If you need help with anything, just say the word." Her voice was soft, concerned, almost convincing. Almost. I shook my head. "Thanks, but I'm good. Are you?" She tilted her head, studying me. "Because you look stressed. That box, it's just stirring up old ghosts. Mom wouldn't want that for you." I pulled my arm free. "You don't know what Mom would want." Something flickered in her expression then. Frustration, maybe. Or calculation. "Well, if you change your mind," she said, her smile brittle. "You know where to find me." "I do," I said, and walked past her into the cold morning air. Out on the sidewalk, I took a deep breath. The box felt heavier in my hands now. Not because of its weight, but because of everything it meant. Lauren's mask had slipped, if only for a second. And Mr. Green. He'd known. They'd all known more than they let on. But I wasn't going to let them steer this anymore. I was going to find Robert Moore, and I was going to get the answers I needed, whether anyone liked it or not. The drive out to Robert Moore's estate took over an hour, but it felt like no time at all. My mind was a blur of thoughts, questions, and what-ifs. By the time I pulled through the gates, massive iron things that creaked open like something out of a movie, I wasn't sure I was ready for what I'd find. The house. No, the mansion. Rose up in front of me, all white stone and glass, with columns and tall windows that reflected the morning sun. A wide marble staircase led up to massive double doors, and neatly trimmed hedges lined the driveway like soldiers on parade. I killed the engine and sat there for a second, my heart hammering in my chest. Then I grabbed the box from the passenger seat and stepped out. A man in a dark suit appeared before I even reached the stairs. His posture was straight, his expression calm, but I could tell he was sizing me up. "Can I help you, sir?" I swallowed. "I need to speak to Robert Moore. It's important." The man didn't blink. "Mr. Moore doesn't take unannounced visitors." I lifted the box slightly. "He'll want to see me." "Please." There was a pause. Then, with a small nod, the man said, "Wait here." Minutes later, though it felt longer, the doors opened again. "Mr. Moore will see you now." I followed him inside, my shoes clicking on the marble floors. The place was like a museum. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers, paintings that probably cost more than my apartment. He led me through a hallway lined with portraits, then into a study that looked like it belonged in some old English manor. Bookshelves from floor to ceiling, dark wood everywhere. And in the center, behind a massive desk, sat the man himself. Robert Moore. He looked up as I entered, and for a second he seemed confused. His silver hair was neatly combed, his suit immaculate, even though he wasn't expecting company. But his eyes, sharp and dark, were what caught me. Eyes that felt oddly familiar. "Yes?" His voice was deep, steady. I cleared my throat. "Mr. Moore. My name is Jackson." He waited, expectant but guarded. I set the box down on the edge of his desk and opened it, pulling out the documents, the photos, the DNA test. I think I'm your son." For a heartbeat, the room was silent, except for the ticking of a clock somewhere behind me. Robert stared at the papers like they were ghosts. His face went pale, then flushed. He reached out, almost hesitantly, and picked up the test result. His hands, I noticed, weren't as steady as his voice had been. He read it, his brow furrowing. When he finally looked up at me again, there was shock in his eyes, and something else. "You're her son." Her name was Evelyn. Evelyn Carter. He sank back in his chair, like the weight of the name had hit him in the chest. "Evelyn," he said softly, as if tasting the word after too long. I waited while he gathered himself. Finally, he spoke. "I loved your mother," he said. "I never stopped." I didn't know what to say. The man I'd built up in my head, the cold billionaire, the untouchable figure, suddenly seemed very human. "She never told me about you," he went on. "Not really. I suspected once. But she kept her distance. I respected that. I was married then. With children. A family that, well, it wasn't simple. I let that sink in." "You could have left them," I said before I could stop myself. His eyes met mine, steady again. "I could have. And I almost did. But your mother didn't want that. She didn't want to break lives apart. She was stronger than me, in that way. I thought of her then, the quiet strength she'd always carried, and it hurt." Robert leaned forward, both hands on the desk. "Why now? Why come to me?" "Because she's gone," I said, my voice cracking just a little. "And because she left me this," I gestured to the box. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his face. "Then let's not waste any more time." His voice was firm now. You're my son, that's what matters. I won't pretend it's simple. But it's true. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I don't want anything from you, I said. I needed to know. He smiled then, small but real. You may not want anything, Jackson, but you have a place here. Whether you choose to take it is up to you. And for the first time in days, maybe in years, I felt like I wasn't standing alone. The next few days passed in a strange, dreamlike blur. Robert didn't waste time. From the moment he'd called me his son, it was like a switch flipped. He opened his world to me, piece by piece. I toured his businesses, sleek offices downtown, warehouses buzzing with activity, boardrooms filled with people who suddenly wanted to shake my hand and call me Mr. Moore. He showed me files, charts, plans for expansions, mergers, charitable foundations. This could all be yours one day, he said, standing at the window of his top-floor office, looking out over the city. The late afternoon sun turned the skyline gold. I didn't know how to respond. The weight of it felt enormous. I didn't come looking for this, I said quietly. I know, Robert replied, turning to me. That's why I want you to have it. When I finally went back to my apartment, it felt smaller than ever. The worn-out couch, the stacks of books, the crooked picture frame by the door, it was all the same, but I wasn't. Word had spread faster than I expected. Lauren was waiting when I got there. She was leaning against her car, arms crossed, trying to look casual, but the tightness around her mouth gave her away. Jackson, she called as I got out. Hey, can we talk? I shut the car door and faced her. What do you want, Lauren? She took a step closer, that too sweet tone back in her voice. I heard about Robert Moore. I mean, wow, that's incredible. And I just wanted to say, I'm happy for you. Really, I mean, it's amazing. And I hope you know, no matter what's happened between us, I'm still your family. We're family. Behind her, I noticed Aunt Marlene and Uncle Todd's car pulling up. Of course. They all got out, looking awkward but trying to smile. Jackson, son, Uncle Todd said, like he'd always called me that. We're proud of you. We always knew you were special. Exactly, Aunt Marlene chimed in. And we're here for you. Whatever you need. I almost laughed. A week ago, I'd been nothing to them. A guy with a box of junk. And now I was worth something. I let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable. Then I nodded. Thanks. But I'm good. Lauren's smile faltered. Jackson, don't be like that. Let's not let old grudges get in the way. We're all on the same side here. I met her gaze, steady. I don't think we are. She blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness. I have to go, I said, heading for my door. Thanks for stopping by. Inside, I leaned against the door, heart pounding. Not from fear, but from clarity. They didn't care about me. Not really. But I wasn't the same guy who would have let that bother him. I was done chasing approval, and I was done letting them define my worth. The wind off the ocean was sharp and cold, but I barely felt it. I stood at the edge of the bluff, looking out at the endless blue, the waves crashing against the rocks below. The sky was streaked with pink and gold as the sun sank low, and the sound of the sea drowned out the noise in my head. I pulled the last letter from my jacket pocket. The paper was worn soft from being unfolded and refolded a dozen times since I'd found it. My mother's handwriting flowed across the page, familiar and aching. My dear Jackson, if you've opened the box, then you know the truth. I wish I'd had the courage to tell you sooner, but I was trying to protect you, from pain, from questions I couldn't answer, from the burden of choices I made long ago. I hope one day you can forgive me. I hope you'll understand that I loved you, always. That everything I did out of love. You are stronger than you know, and no matter what you choose to do with what you've learned, I am proud of the man you are. Live your life, Jackson. Not mine. Not anyone else's. Yours. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, the wind stealing it away. The letter fluttered in my hand, and for a moment I thought about letting it go, letting it be carried out over the cliffs, into the sea. But instead, I folded it carefully and tucked it back into my pocket, because she'd given me the truth, and now it was mine to carry. I stayed there until the sun dipped below the horizon, watching the world turn to twilight, and I realized, standing there in the quiet, that the money didn't matter. The business, the houses, the titles, they weren't what defined me. What mattered was that I finally knew who I was. And I finally knew who she was, really. I wasn't going to run from it, but I wasn't going to let it own me either. When I got home, the apartment felt different. Or maybe I did. I went to the shelf by my desk and found an old picture frame buried behind a stack of books, the kind with a crack in the glass. I slid one of the photos from the box into it, a picture of Mom, younger, standing by a lake, smiling like she had the whole world ahead of her. I set it on the desk, where I'd see it every day. Not as a weight, as a reminder that I chose my path, and I chose myself.